Another day, another 20 companies laying off thousands of people. But why? If AI isn't even advanced enough to replace us yet. And to be honest, we're already 5 years past blaming COVID for overhiring. So what's the real truth behind why companies are letting go of so many people? Welcome back to the Risa Quinn Show.
After announcing or word of its plans to lay off more than 9,000 employees came to Microsoft after announcing.
Let's talk about what's going on in the world. This is very relevant. So Amazon just cut 14,000 jobs. A few months earlier, AWS cut hundreds. Then we have Microsoft cutting nearly 4% of the workforce. But on the opposite end, they're pouring billions into AI. And just this week, Meta just laid off hundreds of people from their AI division. That's strange. Let's not forget, in just 5 months of 2025, employers in the US have announced nearly 700,000 job cuts, which is a lot more than last year. So almost 1 million jobs have gone this year alone, the highest number since 2020. So what's really going on here? Because if AI isn't quite ready to replace us, let's be honest, and the pandemic excuse has expired, then something else is happening. What is that something? Well, let's start with what companies say publicly. All right. It's all the same language over and over. AI efficiency, strategic realignment, restructuring but what does that really mean? What are they trying to say but can't really say? Let's use Amazon as a use case. Contrary to the headlines, due to AI innovation, their most recent layoffs were described as, talk about Amazon first. Contrary to the headlines, due to AI innovation, their most recent 2025 layoffs were described as cost efficient and cultural transformation. Another day, another 20 companies laying off thousands of people. But why? If AI isn't even advanced enough to replace us yet. And we're already 5 years past blaming COVID for overhiring, so we can't use that excuse. So what's the real truth behind why companies are letting go of so many people? Well, welcome back to the Risa Quinn Show. Okay, talk about what's going on in the world. This is very relevant. So Amazon just cut jobs. A few months earlier, AWS cut hundreds. Then we have Microsoft cutting nearly 4% of its workforce, but on the opposite end, they're pouring billions into AI. And just this week alone, Meta laid off hundreds of people from its AI division. That's strange. Let's not forget, in just 5 months of 2025, employers in the US have announced nearly 700,000 job cuts, which is an increase from last year. So almost 1 million jobs have gone this year alone, the highest number since 2020. What's really going on here? Because if AI isn't quite ready to replace us, and we know this to be true, let's be honest, and the pandemic excuse have expired, then something else is happening. What is that something? Well, let's start with what companies are saying publicly. All we hear is the same language over and over. AI efficiency, strategic realignment, restructuring for innovation. But what does that really mean? What are they trying to say but can't really say? Let's chat about Amazon then first. So contrary to the headlines, due to AI innovation, their most recent 2025 layoffs were described as cost efficient and cultural transformation. So not AI replacing humans. And their biggest AI innovation from recent, we have the Nova models, Project Luna, Alexa. But guess what? All of that came after the layoffs, not before. So what exactly does that tell us? That tells us that the layoffs weren't caused by AI, at least not in Amazon's case. They were caused by this idea of AI, the corporate narrative that says we can operate leaner, faster, more profitable, and AI will eventually fill those gaps. Companies aren't firing people because it's AI ready. They're firing people because it's convenient to act like it is. A while back, I made a video about corporate politics, and I talked about how companies sometimes mass firing under like layoffs. I'm not saying this is the case, but this may be the case. Okay. All right. Let's be honest here. Can we be honest, thinkers? AI is seemingly a convenient scapegoat. But when we strip away the PR, the real reasons, the economic, like structural and probably political, and that's office politics, for nearly a decade, companies ran on cheap money. Low interest rates meant easy growth, inflated headcounts, and experimental hiring. Now, with high interest rates and tighter budgets, labor, especially corporate labor, is becoming like first cost to cut. And let's dive deeper. Every time a company announces cuts, stock prices jump. It's not personal, really, it's optics. Investors truly, I think they see this as discipline. And guess what? The executives get bonuses for efficiency. And all this AI transformation make it sound really visionary, not ruthless. So during the pandemic, companies overprojected. They kept hiring for endless remote demand, this miraculous digital transformation and growth that didn't quite pan out. But when things are up, they must come what? Down. When the market normalized, those extra roles didn't fit anymore, but no one wanted to admit bad forecasting. So they called it AI alignment. Right now, companies are moving from employing people to assembling, like, they don't want departments. They want deliverables, people. That's why we're seeing so many contract roles, fractional work, and like projects instead of full-time jobs, roles. They're not replacing what we do. They're changing how they access it, truly. So yes, AI is a part of the story in some ways, but the real headline is this: companies no longer want the liability of permanent people. So AI gives companies this beautiful PR shield. It makes layoffs sound like innovation instead of austerity. But what I discovered there are 3 reasons this works so well. 1, it feels inevitable. When executives say we're preparing for the AI era, it sounds actually really smart, even if it's just downsizing. Number 2, it kind of sounds moral, right? AI isn't emotional. Automation feel less cruel than firing people, and the headlines look better. And number 3, it's technically true eventually, though. AI will reshape industries, but not fast enough to justify this wave of cuts. So they borrow the future to justify the present. That's why I think all of this is so believable, is because they're not lying. They're just telling the truth too early. But to be honest, there's something deeper going on beneath all of this. For most of modern history, companies needed people, not just to produce, but to belong. Now, all of that, it's breaking down. The balance of power is shifting away from the individual towards systems. Executives, they no longer ask, how do we empower teams? They ask things like, how do we build systems that make teams smaller? Have you heard that? I've heard that a lot. It's not personal, because I don't think they're singling out any single person. It's systematic. It's systemic. And you and I were living through this unbundling of employment, where humans are becoming plugins in a larger machine, essentially. And I think, to me, the scariest part is most people don't even realize what's happening. So what do we do with this information? To be honest, I think first we got to stop playing defense. We stop trying to protect our jobs and start building our value stacks. Stop crying on the internet. Because here's what the next decade is looking for in a person: people who can adapt quickly, the ones who pivot before they're pushed out of their current company. They're looking for people who create systems, not tasks, like what to do, how to do, when to do. Those who build the frameworks, automations, or repeatable results. They're also looking for people that know how to use AI, but not fear it. If you compare it with it, you'll outperform those waiting to truly compete with it. So people who build multiple income streams, one employer can't define you anymore because it's not designed to. Am I registering? See, we're moving away from career security to personal sovereignty. And while all of that sounds truly exaggerated and dramatic, it can actually be liberating if you think of it like intentional. It can be liberating. But let's look at the bigger picture. Let's zoom out. If companies don't need us the way they used to, that doesn't mean humans are obsolete. It means institutions are. So we're watching this old economy, one built on lifetime employment, dissolve in real time. And what's emerging instead are network creators, consultants, and what's emerging instead are networks, creators, consultants, and micro companies. The one person enterprises that we talked about in the previous video that can over and outthink entire departments. So yes, companies are laying people off. I know that. But individuals are also building things faster, smaller, and smarter than ever before. That's that paradox. The system is breaking, but opportunity is expanding. So let's be clear. AI isn't the main driver of these layoffs. It's the story being used to justify them. The real shift is economic, structural, and philosophical. I know what you're saying. I know what you're thinking. But companies don't need us in the same way anymore. But the world still does right now. Because even in the AI era, humans decide what matters. We're still the ones who design meaning, ethics, and direction. So we shouldn't ask, what if AI takes my job? We should ask something like, how can I build something AI can't replicate, like perspective and human depth? Companies may not need you and I, may not need us, but society still depends on what only we can create. To be honest, welcome to the new world of work. This is the future of work, where value isn't employed, it's embodied. So I think that's just the new perspective and the new mindset that we'll have to shift towards in the near future. Yeah. What are you guys' thoughts? I'm curious to know. Let me know. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Join my community of deep thinkers. I'm so excited. I'm loving you guys' comments on here. And have a lovely evening.